Synergy is almost as if a group collective agrees to subordinate old script and write a new one. I'll never forget a university class I taught in leadership philosophy and style. We were about 3 weeks into a semester when, in the middle of presentation, one person started to relate some power very powerful personal experience which were both emotional insightful. A spirit of humility and reverence fell upon the classes, reverence towards this individual and appreciation for his courage. This spirit became fertile soil for a synergistic and creative endeavor. Other begins to pick up on it, sharing some of their experience and insight, and even some of their self doubt. The spirit of the trust and safety promoted many to become extremely open. Rather than present what they prepared, they fed on each other inside and ideas and started to create a whole new scenario as to what that class could mean. I was deeply involved in the process. In fact, I was almost mesmerized by it because it seemed so magical and creative, and I found myself gradually losing up my commitment and to the structure of the class and sensing entirely new possibilities. It wasn't just a flight of fancy. There was a sense of maturity and stability and substance which transcended by far the old structure and plan. We abandoned the old syllabus, the purchase textbooks, and all the presentation plans, and we set up new purposes and projects and assignment. We became too excited about what was happening. That is about 3 more weeks. We all sensed an overwhelming desire to share what was happening with other. We decided to write about containing our learning and insight on the subject of our study. Principles of leadership assignments were changed, new projects undertake, new teams form. People work much harder than they would have in the original class structure and for an entirely different set of reasons. Out of this experience emerged an extremely unique, cohesive, and synergistic culture that did not end with the semester. For years, alumni meetings were held among members of that class. Even today, many years later, when we see each other, we talk about it and often attempt to describe what happened and why. One of the understanding thing to me was how little time had transpired before there was sufficient trust to create such synergy. I think it was largely because the pupils were relatively mature. They were in the final semester of their senior year, and I think they wanted more than just another good classroom experience. They were hungry for something new and excited, something that they could create that was truly meaningful. It was an idea whose time had come for them. In addition, the chemistry was right. I felt that experiencing synergy was more powerful than talking about it. That producing something new was more meaningful than simply reading something old. I've also experienced, as I believe most people have, times that were almost synergistic time that hang on the stage of chaos and for some reason descended into it. Sadly, people who are burned by such experience often begin their next new experience with that failure in mind. They defend themselves against it and cut themselves off from synergy. It like administrator who set up new rules and regulation based on the abuses of a few people inside an organization, thus limiting the freedom and creative possibilities for many. Or businesses partners who imagine the worst scenarios possible and write them up in the legal language, killing the whole spirit of creativity, enterprise, and synergistic possibility. As I think back on my consulting and executive education experience, I can say that the highlights were almost always synergistic. That was usually an early movement that required considerable courage, perhaps in becoming extremely authentic in confronting some inside truth about the individual of the organization or the family which really needed to be sad, but took a combination of considerable courage and genuine love to say it. Then other become more authentic, open and honest, and synergistic communication process began. It usually became more and more creative and ended up inside and plans that no one had anticipated initially. As Carl Rogers thought, that which is most personal is most general. The more authentic you become, the more genuine in your expression, particularly regarding personal experience and even self doubt. The more people can relate to your expressions and safer it makes them feel to express themselves. The expression in fats bag on the other person's trade and genuine creative empathy takes place, producing new insight and learning and a sense of excitement and adventure that keeps the process going. People then begin to interact with each other almost in half sentence, sometimes inco- incoherently, but they get each other meanings very rapidly. They then whole new world of insight, new perspective, new paradigms that ensure options, new alternatives are op- opened up and thought about. Through occasionally these new ideas are left in the air, they usually came to some kind of closure that is partial and useful synergy in business. I enjoyed one particularly meaningful synergistic experience as I work with my associates to create the corporate mission statement for our business. Almost all members of the company went high up into the mountains, were surrounded by the magnificence of nature. We began with the first draft of what some of us considered to be an excellent mission statement. At first, the commission was respectful, careful, and predictable, but as we began to talk about the various alternative possibilities and opportunities ahead, people became very open, authentic, and simply started to think out loud. The mission statement agenda gave away to a collective free association, a spontaneous piggyback of ideas. People were genuinely empathic as well as courageous, and we moved from mutual respect and understanding to create synergistic communication. Everyone could sense it. It was exciting as it matured. We return to the task of putting the evolved collective vision into words, each of which contains specific and committed to the meaning for each participated. The resulting corporate mission statement reads: our mission is to empower people and organizations to significantly increase their performance capability in order to achieve worthwhile purpose through understanding and living principle centered leadership. The synergistic process that leads to the creation of our mission statement engrave it in all the hearts and minds of everyone there, and it has served as well as the frame of reference of what we are about as well as what we are not about. Another high level synergy experience took place when I accepted an invitation to serve as the resource and discussion catalyst at the annual planning meeting of a large insurance company. Several months ahead, I met with the committee responsible to prepare for and stage the 2 days meeting, which was to involve all the top executive. They informed me that the traditional pattern was to identify 4 or 5 major issues through questionnaire and interviews and to have alternative proposal presented by the executive. Past meeting had been generally respectful exchange, occasionally deteriorating into defensive win-lose ego battle. They were usually predictable, uncreative, and boring. As I talked with the committee members about the power of synergy, they could sense its potential with considerable trepidation. They agreed to change the pattern. They requested various executives to prepare anonymous white paper on each of the high priority issue and then asks all the executive to immerse themselves in these papers ahead of time in order to understand the issues and the different point of view. They were to come to the meeting prepared to listen rather than to present, prepared to create and synergize rather than to defend and protect.